everyone. This is Krystal and Briana from the Spooky Barber Babes. Tonight we bring to you our Halloween special, and it is all about, drumroll please, the Black Dahlia murder. So we're going to start with a little bit of a background on who the Black Dahlia was, a little bit about her family, and then we'll dive into a bunch of theories about who did it, why they did it, maybe even come up with our own conclusion of who we believe did it.
So before we dive right in, if you are watching us on the YouTube video version of this podcast, welcome, first of all. Thank you for being here. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and also the notification bell so that you know exactly when we post a new episode. And also go over to whatever platform that you get your podcasts on. I'm pretty sure we are on all of them. So we will list them down below just to ensure that we got all of our bases covered. But if you could head over there and also follow us as well, that would be greatly appreciated because it really does help out the podcast a lot. And subsequently, if you are listening on the go, if you have a free moment, please head over to our YouTube channel and give a subscribe and maybe give a watch on the YouTube platform because we do insert a bunch of photos and whatnot. So if you hear us say, you know, insert photo here, or if we're talking about something specific that has a visual to it, you might be able to get that visual a little bit better on a YouTube platform. So get that all out of the way and covered.
And also, if you are just listening and let's say you don't like using YouTube and you want to see the case files that we use, everything will be up on our Instagram as well, the day of our episode release.
Also, we're both dealing with whatever the heck is going on right now. It's not the C word for sure, but we're just definitely both dealing with sinus things because, you know, the fall. So
there's stuff falling out of the trees, just, you know, leaves, and then wind kicking everything up. So if we sound off, don't get upset with us.
It's not an audio glitch, I promise. So without further ado, getting into the Black Dahlia, aka Elizabeth Short, was born on July 29th, 1924. Who else do I know that was born July 29th? Oh yeah.
That would be me. We joked earlier when I saw that, I was like, well, when you're researching a case and you find out you have something similar with the murder victim, that you know, birthday.
So she was born July 29th, 1924 in Boston, Massachusetts, one of my favorite places. So she was born you know, to a pretty large family. She had 4 sisters. Not much is known about her upbringing, except that her parents were separated seemingly the majority of her life. Her father just up and disappeared. To their knowledge, he was dead. He was like, they were notified that he was dead. They kind of found out later on that her father, Cleo, had in fact faked his own death and pretty much sent his family letters later on saying, hey, sorry, I'm not actually dead. I had to fake my own death because of XYZ. Hi, what's up? I live in LA. So
my whole thing on that end is, first of all, how did he get someone to help him fake his death? And then second of all, why come out about it later?
Like, I mean, it was a different time. I guess you could easily kind of fake your own death a little easier back in the 40s without social media. And I mean, realistically then, you know, you had to pretty much pay for stuff in cash. So it's not like it was seemingly difficult to live off the grid back in the day. So, I mean, I'm not saying that it was, you know, 100% possible. I'm just not saying that it was impossible. So, yeah. Whereas, so still segueing back to Elizabeth, she hadn't quite gone out to the LA circuit just yet, but she suffered from multiple respiratory issues and upon doctor recommendation, spent the majority of colder months in Miami, Florida with her friends and seemingly family before she would go up to Boston, Massachusetts during their summer months to hang out with her sisters and her mom. But yeah, I guess cold weather brought on the majority of her respiratory issues, which don't we all, you know?
I mean, I wouldn't mind getting away from the cold.
Right? Can I just, what do they call it? Snowbirds? When the older people head down to Florida, I mean, how many people do we talk to from, you know, the northern Delaware and whatnot area that are like, yeah, I head down to Florida around this time. So, yeah, I mean, goals. But
I don't know if my goal would be to go to Florida or somewhere drier.
Yeah, like I could see, well, I mean, I could see in Arizona or, a Nevada, it's a pretty dry place, but
somewhere dry where, the
it still
heat's
gets
not
hot though.
yeah, but there's no humidity. I don't want
True.
humidity. Humidity what makes things worse.
Yeah, it's true. When I went to Vegas, I was walking around in just like cuffed jeans and a tank top in 100-degree weather, and I was fine. So, I mean, it was hot, but it wasn't like, why am I wearing jeans? I'm sweating hot. Like it
Well,
wasn't that bad.
That's what I need. I need somewhere like that, or somewhere that's got like a really nice big lake in the middle of the mountains and it's a little tiny village and you cannot find me. That's what I need. Yes,
Maybe
I know
that's where
specific.
Cleo went. I don't know.
Maybe.
Maybe. So before Elizabeth went out to LA, it's kind of unknown as to what exactly the time frame she went out there was. All we know is she eventually said, hey, you know what? I need somewhere warm, and I'm going to go live out in Los Angeles with Cleo, her father.
Sometime during this whole finding her father and where he's at and whatnot, she got engaged to a Major Matthew Michael Gordon Jr. He was active in the military, couldn't really figure out what branch he was a part of, which is fine. It's fine. Just gonna let that go.
There was all branches involved in World War II anyway, so realistically,
it could have been any.
Yeah.
So she had told friends that he had proposed marriage to her in a letter that he sent while he was recovering from a plane crash in India. Now, that would have been step one, saying to avoid planes. The engagement sadly was cut short due to, you guessed it, Michael dying in a second plane crash on August 10th of 1945, which was less than a week before the Japanese surrendered. Talk about
crap timing.
Not even just crap timing. I mean, that's just a whole if you didn't have a sign, that was your sign. Just saying.
So shortly before Elizabeth's disappearance in 1947, she was having some issues with her father. No shock. I mean, hey, Dad, you disappeared for however long. Let me just go live with you. We're just going to have this perfect relationship. No problem. Pick up right where we left off, right? But yeah, she was basically having some issues with her father. Money, you need to be working more, partying less, etc. I guess she kind of had a little bit of a wild side.
I wonder where she got that from.
I know. Again, little is known about her father, her family, her upbringing. Just that he just disappeared. So I don't know. But yeah, basically she was known to have some evenings out at some prestigious hotels. Some of her last known sightings were the Cecil Hotel, oddly enough. Check out our first episode on the Cecil and Elisa Lamb. Insert description down below. But then also the Biltmore Hotel, which is also a very, very classy hotel in the downtown part of Los Angeles.
Is it even still around?
It is. And it's open, runs around roughly 200 a night. If not more than that. It probably is a seasonal situation. But yeah, no, many YouTubers have gone and done some overnight stays in some pretty classy and expensive rooms, and I can link a couple down below. Sam and Colby, a couple people, but yeah, it's actually a very, very nice hotel, and that was her last known sighting prior to her disappearance.
Yeah, she was actually last seen alive in the foyer of the Biltmore on the night of January 9th of 1947. I don't know why I keep wanting to say 57, but 47. On the morning of January 15th, 1947, a mother and her child stumbled upon the most gruesome sight that you could imagine. But the problem with it wasn't that it was gruesome at first.
She thought it was a mannequin at first.
The way the body was posed basically made it look like a mannequin had just either fallen out of a truck or, kids took it and just dispersed the mannequin. So they stumbled upon the body of a naked woman who was sliced clean in half at the waist. They were in the Park neighborhood. Don't murder me for not getting that 100% right. But I think the worst part about the whole thing is not only was she like sliced, cut, and mutilated, but there was no blood, like not a single drop anywhere. So that made police think, okay, she wasn't murdered here, she was murdered somewhere else. But I mean, either way, you have to be in a surgical area or have some type of medical background to truly know what you're doing without making a mess and without making it obvious. I mean, we're not talking like, oh, he cut her at the waist and she just bled out. I mean, you got to have some way of disposing of that.
Well, on top of it, it's not just a matter of, you cut off a limb and just, there's arteries, there's, blood and muscle, there's, an entire human body's worth of blood that somehow you have to dispose of, as you said.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, unless he stored it in blood bags and put it in his, freezer. That's assuming it was a he. Could have been a she. You never know.
Yeah. Unsolved.
So the LAPD was actually the ones that mainly took over the investigation, and they had asked the FBI to help assist in finding out who this body was. And FBI was sent on this, it's called sound graph or something like that. It was a very blurry photo of the fingerprints that were attached to the body. And within 56 minutes, the FBI had a turnaround with a name, age, you name it, they had it. And that was because her fingerprints were flagged in their system 2 times. Once as when she applied as a clerk at the Army's Camp Cook in California in January of 1943, which I'm assuming that's maybe how she met her fiance. And then secondly, for getting arrested several months after that for underage drinking. Again, not exactly 100% sure how old she was or what month all that happened in, but that's how they had her fingerprints in their system, apparently.
So actually, and I just had to double check on this because it took me a minute to, remember. So yeah, if she was 17, she was only 1 year off, because the National Minimum Drinking Age Act of 1984 did not go into effect, like I said, at that time. So technically the drinking age was 18 in the US up until 1984. So she was still only a year off from being legal, but
that's assuming that this was after her 17th birthday and not before.
True. So either way, I mean, she was still underage at the end of the day, but just for some clarification, it's not like she was waiting to be 21 at the time. She was just waiting to be 18. So
they identified her body as that being of 22-year-old Elizabeth Short. And she later got the name in the media of the Black Dahlia just because she had a obsession for, or not even an obsession, like an affinity for Black clothing. And she was known to love the movie Blue Dahlia. So get rid of the blue, put the Black in place, and there you go, Black Dahlia. But so with this said, everything went cold. Police did believe that a physician called George Hodel was a part of it, which there's been several documentations on that. Actually, they did believe that he was a suspect just because of his medical practice, but nothing ever stuck. Like there was nothing that they could do that would really get it to be like dead on. I do think they brought him in for investigation, but I don't think it led to really much of anything. But in comes one of the biggest theories that I have found. It's actually about George Hodel's son, Steve Hodel, and just some stuff that he had found after his father had passed away in 1999. From Steve's recount, George was present up until he was about 9 years old, and then he just abandoned the family, went up to the Philippines. But when he was informed of his father's death, he had to kind of like bite the bullet and go through his stuff. And in it, he had found a photo album that was in a small box. It fit, he said, in the palm of his hand, and it was bound in wood. And basically you're a kid, you're nosy, it's a photo album. You're gonna flip it over and then you're gonna look. Everything in the photo album looked like legit, looked normal. Pictures of his mom, pictures of his dad, pictures of him and his brothers, and then also a picture that Man Ray, who was a world famous surrealist artist, had taken of or done of them, because he apparently was a family friend. But it was the last two pictures that he had seen in it that really made him believe that his father was the murderer of the Black Dahlia. These two pictures had a woman looking down, and she had the dark curly hair, and that's kind of what made him think that's the Black Dahlia. Like, oh my God, that's her. There was really no connection that he knew of between them besides just these two pictures. And he spent a lot of his time becoming a police officer for the LAPD. And because, he's a cop, he's like, I'm gonna just, start going through the case files and stuff like that. And he had made note that there was a couple of letters that were sent to the police department claiming that a man by the name of the Black Dahlia Avenger was the man that killed Elizabeth Short. But what he said was that he noticed a resemblance in his father's handwriting to this avenged killer, but also the crime scene photos. And I have to look at this word because I cannot for the life of me say this without trying to enunciate it. It is Hemi Corporectomy. Hope I said that right. If not, please correct me. But it is a procedure where the body is sliced at right beneath the lower lumbar spine. And apparently it's the only spot that you can just go cut straight through without breaking any bones. And it was mainly taught in the 1930s when George Hodel was in medical school. So, just keep stacking it up towards this man.
Weren't there other weird kind of things about how her body was found too? Like how I believe her right breast was cut off as well, just completely.
Yeah.
All righty. And then also, and it was mentioned in Bailey Sarian's video as well, that it was odd that it was that her big toes were painted, and they were done in a way that it was just freshly done. But she brought up the point that perhaps that might have not necessarily, it could have been connected to the killing. It could have been some weird fetish thing. But also she brought up to the point that, if you've worn open-toed shoes and just your big toe is showing, or you just do whatever toes or whatever. So it's a good possibility as well that she could have done that herself. But,
yeah,
it could have also just been some weird fetish thing. You never know. People are into what they're into.
Yeah. Well, I find that the most interesting part that because just reading into the article that was by The Guardian, no one's been able to disprove Steve's recounts of everything, all his evidence. No one, not even the police department, can say he's wrong, and this is why he's wrong. There's been people that have tried, but so far no one's been able to say, no, you're just angry at your father, this is daddy issues. Yeah. It's not. This man's literally going, no, my dad's had the means, he knew how to do this procedure, he had the ability, he had the space. But as also just reading that the main reason why this became such a big case was because of the media. It says the Los Angeles Record carried items on the front page with this 31 consecutive days. So for a month long, this story ran on the very front page every single day.
All right, so before we deep dive into that, let's take a quick ad break and we will be right back to you. You guys are anything like me, you like to stay hydrated throughout the day. So how do you do that? Do you bring a 10-pound lunchbox with you to work with 5 LaCroix and 3 throwaway plastic water bottles? Because that's what I was doing, and it kind of sucked. So how do you fix that? I recently partnered with the Hydro Jug, and let me tell you, this thing has become one of my new favorite items. Not only does it hold almost a half gallon of water, but the wide mouth opening allows me to fit huge bar-size ice cubes in there. I can also fit an entire lemon in there if I wanted to. The neoprene sleeve on the outside comes off and is machine washable. Not only that, but the bottle, the cap, and the straw on the inside are all dishwasher safe. I have so many tumblers that are either glitter or epoxy or decal that I have to hand wash. So not only does this thing get you hydrated, it saves you time. Think this style's too girly? Not a problem. They come out with different colors and styles almost weekly. So there really is something for everyone. Check out the affiliate link in the description below to get your Hydro Jug today. And thank you to the Hydro Jug for partnering with me as a brand ambassador. In terms of like the LAPD and stuff, they had over 758 investigators between them and the FBI on it from the very beginning in the initial stages. I mean, it slowly decreased, as the case went colder and colder, but I mean, they had a lot of people on it between.
So what I think I never realized, and I don't want to go and say every word of this, but it's saying that the main intrigue that came from this case was just the sheer brutality, and I never realized, but it says before she was killed, she was forced to eat feces. It said she had been forced to eat that. Her flesh and downstairs hair were shaved off her body and inserted into the front and the back. And that it said that her uterus was removed completely and that long gashes extended in what we've learned was called the Glasgow smile, which that's a whole nother rabbit hole of itself that I had to back out of.
Picture Heath Ledger Joker. That's like the one photo that I don't think will get flagged on YouTube.
Yeah, but I think that's probably the only one.
Yeah,
well, I mean, no, or the one from the girl who portrayed Elizabeth Short.
That as well. But that one I would say is like dulled down a good significant amount. Speaking of portrayed Elizabeth Short, I mean, she's been portrayed in a couple different versions. They did an entire movie, I believe it was 2010, called The Black Dahlia. It has Josh Hartnett, Scarlett Johansson.
I think that might have been 2006.
Okay, it was early 2000s, I know that, but it's very, very a far stretch. It's not exactly to the story exactly. It's also a brief story arc in season 1 of American Horror Story, so Murder House, almost insinuating that she is connected to, that she was connected to the murder house. She went there for a procedure and her death resulted in that. Now obviously that's a far stretch, but like, is it?
Well, and so that also goes on to the other theory of that she had met Hodel and was trying to find surgery, and I'm wondering if maybe like with her uterus being removed, maybe she went to him to have it taken out. Maybe she was having some problems that nobody knew, or, and I don't mean to say it this way, but I mean, like, who's to say she wasn't pregnant?
Because that's kind of the story arc that's included in Murder House. I mean, it's definitely kind of on the lines of the same, theories of Jack the Ripper, that somebody had medical knowledge and medical expertise in order to commit such a heinous crime that required medical knowledge. Not, someone with just willy-nilly, I'm going to decide to just kill somebody today. You have to know human anatomy in order to do these types of procedures. So that's where I think the Hodel kind of theory comes in, is that he did have that knowledge.
But so the other thing with that is there wasn't a toxicology report done. At least none that I could find. And I'm sitting here going, well, wait, why wouldn't that have been a thing? I mean, you clearly see all this stuff was done to her. Was she drugged? Was she sedated? Was she awake? Like, was she tortured, or like, was all that done after the murder just to make it seem like some sick, crazy psychopath did stuff to her?
So here's my question in that time frame, and this is maybe one of those other rabbit holes too of, just advancements in crime scene investigating and whatnot. I mean, were toxicologies big at that time? And when the body was drained of blood, how much could really how much can be found out of
I
a
would
body with no blood?
assume they could probe like the liver and the kidneys. I mean,
Maybe.
it didn't say that all bodily fluids were gone. It just said that
True.
her blood was gone. And I mean, I'm assuming that they could have dissected, the liver, whatever was left of the stomach, if there was any. I mean,
Yeah.
because there had to be something for them to find out that she was force-fed feces. There had to be some way of them finding that out. So if there had to be something. So I mean, if she was drugged, poisoned, or anything like that, it would have been in her stomach contents.
That's true.
But
Because I know
I
at the
mean,
time DNA wasn't big back then. DNA didn't
no,
really become a thing until we were children, but
which
it's
I mean,
crazy that
that's
was 30 years ago. But I
well, so
mean,
my whole thing is did they ever say that, like, 'cause I couldn't find it. I don't know if maybe you could find it, but did they ever say anything about there being like sexual assault or trauma?
so I mean, there's theories that if Hodel was in fact the one that um was the culprit, because Hodel's daughter, in fact, accused him of sexually assaulting her. So
Yeah.
I think it's kind of presumed like if they were involved, but I'm not sure if there was actual evidence of.
I honestly don't think they even looked it up,
Yeah.
to be honest with you. I don't think that it was even a thought in their mind. And who's to say that, like, if, I mean, they obviously were down there, why didn't they do like a little kit to see? Because I mean, who knows, like DNA now, they're taking stuff from cold cases years ago and putting it into a system. And if a relative gets onto, like, what was it, ancestry.com, isn't that how they found the Golden State Killer? It was a family member, it wasn't even that person. So who's to say that, okay,
Well, think about,
Steve
I mean,
Hodel goes
again,
in, puts his DNA in, and then it pops up, oh, you're related to a suspect we have DNA on in this case.
Well, and again, and I hate to kind of throw it back to like the time, and this is going to kind of sound incredibly
But it's
sexist when I
true.
say this, but think about the time frame that we're talking about here. It's a bunch of male investigators, because I don't think women were big in the field then. This is about, a bunch of investigators in the late 1940s who were dealing with a woman who was found naked and chopped up. They just, oh, well, what are we doing here, Jack? I don't know. Like, like, I hate to say it, but it's probably was the case. I mean, they probably didn't really know what to do with that, other than we've probably never dealt with anything like this before. That's probably why it's a famed case, is because you haven't really, I mean, other than Jack the Ripper, you haven't really seen much of anything like that.
No, because wasn't the Zodiac shortly after?
Shortly, yeah. And I mean, they didn't know what to do with that either, because
but so that also kind of like strikes up another theory that I'd seen, was that actually Elizabeth Short was Zodiac's first victim.
Yeah.
And that if they do tie that in, man was intelligent, medical things, but I mean, I don't see how that would tie in.
Yeah.
But I've seen different theories, like, oh, well, maybe that was his first case and he just realized it was too much work.
Yeah.
So that's when he switched to the gun. No, I don't think that's the case. No. But I will say that if Hodel did do it with the knowledge that he had and stuff like that, why only her?
Yeah.
That's my biggest thing, is why only her? Why didn't we find more bodies like that? Or who's to say there wasn't more bodies and he just didn't dispose of them? Who's to say he didn't just, bury them in his backyard?
Well, and again, the thing that I think people have to consider, and it's like you said earlier, of the, while we're theorizing of, oh, who says it was a man? Women in the 1940s, in terms of medical training, you or I could walk up off the street during World War II or during really any kind of war times and say, hey, I'll volunteer to be a nurse. No medical training. They're just like on the fly, like, oh, here, this is how you do a tourniquet, like as you're physically doing one. You are applying pressure and you're learning on the fly. So this is a stretch, but I mean, people were seemingly performing kind of minor, if not major life-saving, procedures essentially, with little to no medical training. So is it plausible that, you know, it could have been someone who had otherwise just kind of been a medical volunteer or a medical assistant at the time, possibly.
What, being trained on site?
Yeah, like a trained on
Because
site, learn as
so
you go kind of a thing. I mean, World War II spanned, you know, how
the
long?
only
So
thing the only thing that kind of throws a monkey wrench in that
yeah.
is how difficult that procedure was.
Oh, for sure.
I feel like that's the only reason why I'm like, you know, you want to say it could be a she. I mean, it could be plausible that it could
Yeah.
be, but like you were just saying, the medical field was not a big thing for women to go and get the actual medical studies.
Oh yeah.
So what I'm mostly thinking is that it was it had to have been a guy.
Libraries were a thing though. Libraries were a thing.
Yeah.
Medical libraries were a thing. It's, I mean, now
I feel
what
like you
the
have to do some
access to
practice.
certain nurses and whatnot had to that at the time is kind of up in the air. But
I mean, who knows? Who's to say that it wasn't?
like I said, it could have
I don't
been
know.
like a medical assistant. Like it could still be on the male, you know, spectrum, but it
Or
could have been a you know.
or it could have also just been like a training. Like, oh, well, what do you do if this comes in? Let's try to fix it. Oh,
Yeah.
you can't fix it? Yes, you're right. You can't fix it. And then that's it.
Yeah.
So, and it just makes you wonder, like, what state of mind Elizabeth was in. Because that's really the other thing about it all is, what state of mind was she in? Who was she around?
Especially too, if her last known sighting was at the Biltmore, chances are she was out for the evening. She was having a couple, you know, glasses of wine, a couple cocktails.
Who's to say it didn't get crazy?
Well, who's to say she didn't, you know, she wasn't, I don't know what kind of, you know, date rape drugs were around in the day, but there was
who's to say
versions of it. I mean,
yeah.
On top of it, I mean, people would randomly be like, just be out at the bar, you know, just having a good time and just, oh, you want to do a little cocaine, you know, like that was a thing. It was not as a thing as it is now. So I mean, who's to say that she didn't just, you know, go a little too far and someone took advantage and it followed? But
not saying that it was a thing, but who's to say that she wasn't a night walker? If you catch my drift. I mean, she was, you said it yourself, she was having issues with her dad. She was, you know, because he was like, gotta stop partying, gotta work on a job, making money. Well,
she was a waitress at the time. So, I mean, realistically, waitresses
they didn't make a lot. I mean, no offense, waitresses now still don't make a lot. I mean, that's just a profession that I hate to say should get more, but they don't. But I mean, even so back then, so you're not making a lot at your day job. So you go into your night job and maybe she just picked up the wrong John.
Sure.
And
it happens all the time.
I hate to speak ill of the dead like that, but I mean, there's nothing saying that wasn't the case. I mean, you're telling me she spent nights at these high-end hotels, but was having, as her dad said, money issues. How was she getting the money? Where was she getting the money? Who was funding these nice fancy hotels and all the going out for her? So it really does paint a really negative picture. When you think about it like that, it's like, whoa, was she scoping out the hotel? Was she sitting in the hotel bar looking for men and she just maybe got in bed with the wrong one?
Yeah. And I think realistically, that's probably the most plausible explanation to what happened. You know, I'm not saying like put the detective hat on, close the case, but yeah. Laura Nash should be very proud. But that's what I'm saying is that I feel like realistically, like you're saying, if she was having those, and everyone paints her as this Hollywood starlet, like everyone thinks she was this actress. No, she was a hopeful, just like a lot of people who would move out to LA at that time, if not still now. But
and a lot don't make it.
No, and a lot don't make it. She was being looked at. Was she photographed? She was a beautiful girl for the time. I mean, if you like look at her photo. So it's not that she, you know, just had no hope. I mean, but like a lot of people who move out there, I mean, it's not an instantaneous thing. Sometimes you got to pay your dues for several years.
And sometimes in the process,
they even get caught. Yeah. I mean, how many actors do you hear about that, move out to LA, do a couple years of essentially like, extra gigs and coffee shop gigs and waitressing gigs and stuff like that, essentially paying their dues just until until something comes along. And seemingly while they're doing that, just in case it doesn't work out, because anything can happen, especially when you're trying to get into that industry. You can go on as many auditions as you want. You can book a gig. You can book a pilot for a TV show. Doesn't mean that pilot's going to get made.
Yeah. Also, if I'm correct, Sebastian Stan said something about he didn't get paid, like he got like a small paycheck from doing, was it Captain America, the first one?
The first one.
Like that little tiny bit that he had, he was like, I barely got paid for that.
Yeah.
So, and it's just like everyone thinks, oh, actors and actresses, you make so much money.
Yeah.
But truth be told, if you're a secondary or a side piece, hate to say it like that, you're not getting paid the money.
It's funny that you say side piece, because it was not an uncommon thing in that time frame. This is well before the Me Too movement. Keep that in mind, guys. But that was not an uncommon thing for married directors, married producers, married casting directors to essentially be like, hey, you want to be a big star and you want to be in my movie or you want to be in my TV show? Here's what you can do for me. So again, well before the Me Too movement, and I'm not saying that's specifically what happened to her, but it's not, it was a very common thing that was, I think. That's hence Marilyn Monroe, which that'll be a whole nother episode for another day. But
yes, I was actually just about to say Marilyn Monroe falled in on a lot of that too. But the only difference was Marilyn Monroe was bigger than just a hopeful, because I don't think Elizabeth Short was in anything.
She wasn't. No, I
think it was just she just had her headshots out.
Like she had been used as a model for several things, but it wasn't like
she wasn't actually cast in anything or anything like that,
or anything that would show up on any sort of filmography or anything of the sort. So
don't mind me. That was a sideways yawn if you were watching that. But I mean, so we're still saying we don't know. No one knows what happened to her. Nobody knows if her murderer is still alive. If he's dead. If it was George Hodel, well, then he's dead. Her mother died in 1992 and went to her deathbed knowing that her daughter's murderer never saw justice.
Well, and it's not like they didn't receive confessions or tips. They received over 60 during the bulk of the initial investigation, mostly from men, none of which were ever fully investigated, or if they were, they didn't find full evidence on any of them other than obviously George Hodel, and stuff like that. So, and then since then there have been over 500, most of which weren't even born at the time. So like, you bored, bro? But like, that's what I'm saying. Like, are you that bored? So that's what I don't understand. Why would you even go to the extra effort to commit or to confess to a crime that you weren't even involved in? Why would you, like, you Honestly, and I aren't going to go to the cops and confess for a crime that we didn't do. We don't need that attention. Like,
well, so I'm thinking that's all that was. It was either attention or they were mentally unstable.
Well, that too, but
or who knows? Maybe
a total of 60 men that were mostly unstable. What are the odds of that, though?
That, or maybe all of those 60 men confessed to murders that they did. But just claimed that one. Because I mean, you can't tell me that there hasn't been a serial killer that has actually confessed to the murders anonymously and got blown off.
Probably.
I feel like that would just have to be a serial killer's rush.
I mean, they weren't really taking the Zodiac things super seriously at first either.
Nope.
And until it's like popped up, like, oh, there's more than these. Oh, okay.
Which and I think, there may actually be more that could have been labeled as a different killer. Because I mean, weren't they saying that There was we're going to get into it on the Zodiac episode, but there is another killer that they think was the Zodiac, but instead of staying in California, he traveled and actually hit different states. I want to say it was some root killer or something like that. But there was rumors that that was the Zodiac because he was very intelligent. But who's to say? Who's to say that the killer did that? Her killer himself didn't go to another state, murder someone else, but it didn't get the same media attention because it wasn't the same like slaughter. Because I mean, let's face it, that's what it was a slaughter.
Well, and the one like the lead one of the lead people who were on the case, like Sergeant John P. St. John, that's a name. Who like he worked on the case until he retired. He basically said he was so amazed at how many people were willing to like just offer up a family member just willy-nilly. So just heads up, guys, if you ever commit murder, be careful which family members you confess to, because
even that, I mean, it's like, so was there a reward for it?
I don't know,
because if there was a reward, that would explain why people were offering up their family.
Oh yeah, for sure. But it's just funny that, I mean, again, it was probably for like the fame and the intrigue. I mean, I hate to kind of say it, but I mean, how many people who are descendants of essentially famed serial killers have gotten some sort of media exposure over the years due to one documentarian or another. I mean, there was that whole documentary of H.H. Holmes's great grandson who you know, still, who I completely 100% agree with him that his great-great-grandfather was in fact Jack the Ripper. I've watched that docuseries twice now, and I still can't find anything that I disbelieve. And then same with, you know, George Hardell's kids who did the Ghost Adventures.
Yep. That's what I was just about to say.
I'm not saying it's all for media exposure, but you get some media exposure in some form or another.
I think in the one case, I know she said her mother had passed away with the belief that because it was actually his grandchild, if I'm correct, that was the one who passed away. And they actually, at the end of the episode, there's a in memoriam for her. But she said, you know, the whole family believed that he did it. And my whole thing is, if your whole entire family boss is saying, oh yeah, no, he definitely did it, you might as well just say, okay, I did it, even though, yeah, you know, you physically can't anymore, but
well, just like there's modern cases, like a very particular media heavy case that we're going to get into next month, that it just doesn't make sense otherwise for you to just, you know. So,
and I'm pretty sure everyone already knows what case we're talking about.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you haven't been paying attention in the media and you have no clue what we're talking about, go ahead and go take a look at what the biggest manhunt that literally just went down over,
when we get into that case, guys, that's going to be one to buckle down, because I've already said just from this morning when I was downloading some photos that it's going to be a beast.
I hate to say that one actually might be like the Doomsday Couple case, and we might actually have to do like
multiples parts.
So speaking on the Doomsday case, everyone, I will be touching base once Chad Daybell's trial starts. That should be starting at some point next month. So just that'll be a podcast exclusive that will not be on YouTube. So if you're not following the podcast, I definitely suggest you go take a little click over there. And then also, if you haven't caught up on the Daybell case, I would definitely say there's, I want to say 4 episodes up. Definitely go take a look and take a listen and form your opinions. But as for the Black Dahlia, I mean,
it's still unknown to this day. I mean, we can theorize as much as we want. Just like there's a lot of deep dive rabbit holing you can do on a lot of these unsolved cases, but at the end of the day, they're unsolved. So
would we love to say, yeah, we figured something out, but I mean, honestly, we're 2 barbers who just love true crime. And
we're not throwing out prolific facts here that nobody's probably thrown out before. Like, no.
And like we've said multiple times, this is our passion. Would we love to see some of this stuff reopened and actually like case closed and have some type of closure? Yeah, that would be great. Do we expect it to happen? Probably not.
Well, never say never. They found the Golden State Killer after how long? Because of Michelle McNamara, hard pressing to find that information.
Yeah.
I mean, heck, she like went into whatever office and said, "Hey, I have a dolly. Can I take all the boxes?" And they just gave them to her. So it's
and wasn't
not
it
that
also
it's,
because of the DNA record from a cousin or a nephew of his?
yeah, like through Ancestry or whatever, and
Yeah,
it
it was
was how many years after.
ancestry.com.
And sadly, Michelle McNamara passed prior to finding this information out. If you have not, go and watch I'll Be Gone in the Dark on HBO Max. It's a docu-series in regards to the book with the same title written by Michelle McNamara. If you know who the comedian Patton Oswalt is, it was his wife that passed away in 2016, sadly. But so she never got to see her passion project come to life, but it did because of her reopening, because of her saying, no, there are answers here. It happens. So am I saying it's impossible? No. I mean, the Golden State Killer was what, the 70s? And she figured it out, and it was found out in 2016.
I feel like there was too much mishandled with this case, though.
Yeah.
That's
For sure.
That's the saddest part about it.
That's in large part, I think, to the time frame that it was. Nowadays, if something like that's were to happen in our time, oh my goodness, it would be like everyone's in hazmat suits to prevent the contaminating of evidence. I mean, you see crime scene photos of just guys in just suits, just like, oh, we're just gonna
there's
load.
more. It's
I
not
want to
just
say
the
there's
police.
a photo of her remains in just trash bags. They just transported her to the coroner's office in trash bags. So there's just there was a lot mishandled with it.
So and I feel like because there was so much mishandling of it, that the chances of them finding her, like her killer, are just sadly slim. If they didn't do a rape kit on her, which don't think they did.
That was
I feel like it's just a thing.
Well, I hate to say too, I mean, I hate to even go so far as to say that it was mishandled. I mean, that's just how it was handled. That's just what they did. And again, it's like I said before, I don't think they knew what to do with this situation. Because typically if they were on a homicide case, there's like a one whole body to say, okay, this guy had a gunshot wound to the head. Cool. So
I feel like the only reason why I say misconduct with the case was just because, again, with the time that it was, that's not really too much of an excuse as to why they didn't handle everything the way they would have handled a male. And I do hate to say it that way, but true. If it was a male dead at the time, more would have been done. But no, it's a female. And again, going on my theory of the possible, prostitute, let's just call it what it is.
Asking for it.
There was that whole, she must have asked for it, or she must have done something to deserve this, which is horrible to say. And no, mind you, this is no disparagement on the LAPD and their part in this case and stuff like that. So please don't take it as
a different time bashing that. But
we're going back off of the times that women were not seen as much as they were. I don't want to say hurt. They weren't seen for who they were. They were seen for what they could do and provide, which was, you're talking at that time, you're talking about the housewives, where women didn't really work. If they did, it really wasn't known, or it was a military thing. We're talking about a generation where they literally fed on Coke to get their daily household chores done, so that way they could have the kids taken care of, the laundry done, the dishes done, a home cooked meal ready and presented for when their husbands walked in the door. We're talking about that. And there's little been proven that the women were prescribed literally had cocaine in their systems. That's how they were able to keep doing this. So I mean, you're looking at a whole generation of people that were just like go 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 go, but the women were always seen behind closed doors.
Well, you got to factor too, this is also less than like shoot, like not even 70 years. So less than 100 years at this point into when women were even given the right to vote. So, because that was like 1878. So, I mean, you're talking between that and 1947 that it's like, again, women weren't really seen so much as more than like the housewives. I mean, heck, they were known, still expected to be that in the 50s and the 60s. And then, you know, even somewhat upwards into the 70s, you know, as that. So it really wasn't until, it's crazy when you think about timeline of when you and I were born, that there really wasn't a ton of time in between when we started to gain, you know, like respect as working women, as a people. So
and let me say this, even in our profession now, Brianna and myself both, we get guys that walk into our shop that go, well, I don't want women to touch me. I don't want a woman to touch me. I get guys that say, oh, I don't want a woman touching my beard. It doesn't happen as much.
No.
And I'm noticing,
especially for the brand we work for, our brand is very well known. So,
but we still do get it. We get it. And it's still a little demeaning on our end.
And heck, it was when the one day a guy came in, the area manager was there, and it was funny because, you know, he said something about like, oh, is it just women working today? And our area manager just looks him straight in the face and goes, yeah, the women that run this place are working today. So like
it does come down to the fact, and like everybody's like, people can always say, oh, it's just a generational thing, it's just a generational thing. Well, it's not to be honest with you, it is not the older gentlemen that we deal with that give us that. It is the gentlemen our age, maybe 10 years older, that give us that, who are brought up with that mindset of a woman can't do the same job as a man. And it sucks.
Yeah.
But we're breaking the stigma. We're doing good. I mean, like she said, we both work, even though we don't work for the same store anymore and the same owners, we do still work in an industry where we are very heavily led with women. Yes, we have some guys that work in the shop, but we are a heavily woman functioning salon.
Yeah.
And it's only getting better, people.
And I mean, and that's a whole tangent for another day, especially given the time that Elizabeth lived in. You know dang well that in the 40s there were not women doing what we do for a living, except for maybe doing roller sets and perms. But there were beauty parlors and there were barber shops.
Yeah, you wouldn't have walked into a barber shop
did not go into the other. So
no, I think they said back in that time frame of Elizabeth Short's time, women were only really seen getting the groceries, or, you know, out with the children, being the happy homemaker, and not seen so much working, unless I think really the only time it was really known was if it was a single mom situation. And even then it wasn't oh, you didn't make it work with your relationship. No, usually the husband and wife are still together and the husband's off doing his thing with somebody younger. And I hate to say it that way, but it's the truth. That's a lot of what was done back then.
And as I said with the whole casting thing and the Hollywood thing, is that was a very common thing for men that worked in Hollywood to have a home life, have wives, have children, have whatever, but also have something going on with his side secretary in addition to whatever else. So, and I hate that might just be a, you know, notion to too many TV shows and movies that portray that stigma, but where did the stigma come from otherwise? So as you can see, we have gone on a very deep dive rabbit hole into the time of the 40s.
We tangented off way too far. But at the end of the day, it comes down to it is you can see the difference between the 1940s and the 2020s. Things have escalated so much.
Technology is insane. I can't imagine what technology nowadays would do with Elizabeth's case if it were given the opportunity. So,
and that's the whole thing. Like, I really wish that I really wish there was a way for them to go in and get, but again, there was no articles of clothing found, if I'm correct.
She was stark naked.
So whatever DNA that was on her body, I guarantee you is gone. And that's the worst part about it is it's all probably gone.
Well, with the draining of the blood, I'm sure there was probably a solid good like rinse down too. So
Yeah,
this
but
is one
still
of those
placing
dish
it. You
sprayers,
can't.
by the way. If anyone's ever worked in like a restaurant kitchen, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So with that being said, that brings us to the end of today's spooky barber tangent.
Halloween special.
Yes, our
Us
Halloween
ranting.
special. But yeah, so if you have made it this far, thank you so much. Once again, remember to like, subscribe, ring that notification bell so you know exactly when we're posting an episode, and follow us over on the podcast platforms at the is it Spooky Barber or Spooky Barber Podcast?
I want to
or Spooky Barber Babes. I don't even know what we are anymore.
we had some issues for a little while there. So on YouTube, on YouTube we are the Spooky Barber Babes. On Instagram we are Spooky Barber Babes. On Spotify and all them we are the Spooky Barber Babes. No, we're Spooky Barber Babes. Sorry,
all
we
of
left
this
out
will be linked down below, by the way.
Yeah, it's but we do actually have a group inside on Facebook. It is a Spooky Barber Babes fan group. So if you're interested in that, you can always let us know as well. And we'll join. We'll get a link in there for you guys. But yeah, we're slowly getting our stuff together. We promise. It is what it is. So earlier, hopefully you guys have been following up this whole week. We've had a bunch of different like Halloween special murders that were all let up on Halloween. If you haven't taken a listen to them, like I said, they are all podcast exclusives.
There are no videos for these, so if you're trying to find them, they don't exist.
No. But we do have some case files up on the Instagram platform. So if you're interested, go take a look, and we'll see you guys next time.